The first time Wren Halloway ever laid eyes on Theo Aldercress, he was sitting cross-legged in the grass of Maple Hollow Elementary's playground, gripping a battered Game Boy Color like it contained the secrets of the universe, and refusing, point-blank, to let anyone else touch it. "You can watch," 6-year-old Theo announced to the small crowd of curious classmates gathered around him. "But nobody touches the buttons. My cousin let his friend play once, and the friend released his shiny Ponita by accident, and it's never coming back." Wren, small for her age and fiercely stubborn about it, had pushed through the crowd with the confidence of a girl who did not understand the concept of being told no. "I won't touch the buttons," she said. "I just want to see what a shiny Ponita looks like." Theo studied her for a long moment with the gravity only a 6-year-old boy guarding a beloved possession can summon, then scooted over on the grass and made room. "Fina, but if you breathe on the screen, I'll know." That was it. That was the whole beginning. No fireworks, no cosmic sign, just two kids on a patch of grass, one guarding a video game with his life, and the other refusing to be told she couldn't look, and from that day forward, they were inseparable in the specific, uncomplicated way only childhood allows. They spent the next several years building an entire shared universe together, trading Pokemon cards at recess, staging elaborate pretend battles as their favorite game characters, with a rotating cast of school friends who never quite understood the full mythology Wren and Theo had built between just the two of them, sleepovers at each other's houses that turned into entire weekends, homework sessions that dissolved into hours of Super Smash Brothers the moment either set of parents left the room. By middle school, the friendship had deepened into something that ran on its own private language. Inside jokes nobody else found funny, a shorthand of glances that communicated entire conversations, the specific comfort of never once having to explain yourself to the other person because they already understood. "You two are so weird," Wren's older cousin told her once, home for a holiday, watching Wren and Theo argue passionately about optimal Smash character matchups across the dinner table. "Are you sure you're just friends?" "Obviously," Wren said, not even looking up from her plate. "He's basically my brother." She meant it at 13. She really did. High school split them into different schools. Theo's family had moved 20 minutes across town the summer before 9th grade, landing him at Brackenridge High while Wren stayed at Ashford. But the distance didn't do what distance usually does to childhood friendships. If anything, it deepened it, because now seeing each other required actual effort, actual choice, two people deliberately carving out time in increasingly busy teenage lives to keep something they both clearly valued enough to fight for. Wren was at Theo's house constantly. Weekends, some weeknights, entire summers structured loosely around whatever project or game or half-baked scheme he'd cooked up that particular season. They started playing Smash Brothers competitively together during sophomore year, entering local tournaments at a rundown arcade called Pixel Junction that smelled permanently of carpet cleaner and stale popcorn, cheering each other on from folding chairs, developing an entire reputation among the regional competitive scene as the duo from Maple Hollow, who'd apparently known each other since they were 6. "You two are disgustingly cute," their mutual friend Priya. "No, wait, I need to change that." Their mutual friend Odalise Marsh told them once, 16 years old, watching Theo teach Wren a new combo technique with the patient, unhurried focus he reserved for almost nothing else in his life. Like, genuinely. "Just 8 already. Save everyone the trouble of watching this." "Huh, no," Wren said automatically. The same reflexive laugh she always gave whenever anyone said some version of that sentence, which by 16 had become a fairly regular occurrence among their friend group. "We're just really good friends." "Really, really good friends," Theo agreed, equally automatic, not even looking up from the controller in his hands. Odalise rolled her eyes so hard it was practically audible. "Sure, whatever helps you sleep at night." Wren laughed it off every single time someone said it, the same easy dismissal she perfected over years of practice. But somewhere around the start of junior year, quietly, without any single dramatic moment she could point back to later, the laugh had started costing her something it hadn't cost before. It happened gradually, the way these things tend to. She noticed, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon at Pixel Junction, that Theo had gotten taller over the summer. His voice had settled into something lower, And when he leaned over to point out a mistake in her combo timing, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers, something in her chest did an entirely unfamiliar, entirely unwelcome flip. She spent that whole evening staring at her bedroom ceiling, replaying the moment, horrified. Oh no, she thought. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Because here was the impossible math of it. Theo Aldercress was her best friend. Had been her best friend for 11 years. He knew things about her nobody else knew. The specific way she cried when she was frustrated instead of sad, the fact that she still slept with the hallway light on some nights, the entire embarrassing history of her failed attempt at a bowl cut in 4th grade. If she let herself feel this thing, this inconvenient, terrifying thing, and it went wrong, she wouldn't just lose a crush. She'd lose the single most important relationship of her entire life. So she did what any sensible 16-year-old girl in her exact situation would do. She panicked quietly, told absolutely nobody, and tried very hard to bury the feeling under an avalanche of normal, platonic best friend behavior. It did not work particularly well. Feelings, it turns out, are famously resistant to being buried. For the better part of a year, Wren carried the secret carefully, the way you carry something fragile you're terrified of dropping in front of witnesses. She kept showing up at Theo's house, kept competing beside him at tournaments, kept laughing off the just-date-already jokes with the same practiced ease, even as each one landed a little closer to a nerve she was desperately trying to protect. The problem was, the more time passed, the harder the feeling got to bury. It wasn't just physical, though that part was real too. It was everything. The way Theo remembered, without being asked, that she took her Dairy Queen Blizzard with extra Reese's Pieces blended in. The way he'd quietly notice when something was bothering her before she'd said a single word about it, and would just sit with her, not pushing, until she was ready to talk. The way he defended her, freshman year, against a boy who'd made fun of her stutter, with a fierceness that had genuinely surprised both of them, given how easygoing Theo usually was about almost everything else in his life. She loved him. Not, he's basically my brother, loved him. The real kind. The kind that made her stomach twist every single time he mentioned some girl from his school might be interested in him. The kind that made her genuinely nauseous imagining a future where he found someone else, and she was still just a friend from childhood, cheering politely from the sidelines of his actual life. Junior year turned into senior year, and the secret got heavier, harder to carry quietly. She finally cracked one exhausted night in early autumn, calling her closest confidant outside of Theo, a boy named Kellan, who'd been part of their friend group since middle school and had, over the years, become someone Wren trusted with almost anything. "I need to tell you something," she said, sitting on her bedroom floor at 11 at night. Phone pressed to her ear. "And you cannot tell a single living soul, especially not Theo." "Obviously," Kellan said. "What's up?" "I think I'm in love with him." The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding her breath around them for months, which, honestly, she had. "I don't know what to do. I don't know if he feels anything back. I don't want to ruin the best friendship of my entire life over feelings that might just be one-sided and stupid." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Wren," Kellan said finally, very carefully, like a man trying not to spook a nervous animal. "I need you to understand something. I have watched that boy look at you for 11 years. I have never once seen him look at anyone else the way he looks at you. If this is one-sided, I will personally eat my own shoe. You're just saying that to make me feel better. I'm absolutely not. I am saying it because it's objectively, embarrassingly true, and everyone in our friend group has known it for years, except apparently the two of you." He paused. "Give me some time. I have an idea." "Kellan, no. Do not meddle. I mean it. I'm already meddling. It's happening. You cannot stop the meddling train once it has left the station." What followed was, by Wren's own later account, one of the most chaotic 6 weeks of her entire adolescence. Kellan's first attempt involved orchestrating a spontaneous group hangout designed to leave Wren and Theo alone together at a bonfire, an elaborate plan that collapsed entirely when 3 other friends showed up uninvited because nobody had told them about the actual plan, and the evening dissolved into a normal group hangout with zero romantic tension whatsoever. His second attempt involved trying to convince Theo, via a series of increasingly unsubtle hypothetical conversations, to simply confess his feelings to Wren first, an effort that ended in genuine disaster when Theo, disoriented and loopy from having his wisdom teeth removed that same afternoon, tried to drive himself to Wren's house mid-confession attempt while still under the influence of anesthesia, alarming his own mother so badly she called Kellan directly, screaming into the phone, "Do not drive after wisdom teeth surgery. What is wrong with you? Why did you tell him to do this?" "I did not tell him to drive anywhere," Kellan protested, later, to a hysterically laughing Wren over the phone. "He was supposed to just call you. I told him to call, not to drive across town with a mouth full of gauze." He got in his car while high on anesthesia. He got approximately 2 blocks before his mom caught him in the driveway, physically wrestling the keys out of his hand. He kept saying, "I have to tell Wren," over and over like a broken record. It was simultaneously the most romantic and most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wren laughed until she cried, genuinely, helplessly, at the mental image of Theo, cheeks stuffed with gauze, half-conscious from surgery, apparently so determined to confess something that he'd try to drive a car in that condition. "Okay," she said, once she'd recovered. Please stop trying to arrange things. I'll figure it out myself eventually." "You will absolutely not figure out yourself. You've had a year and a half, and all you've done is panic quietly in your bedroom." "I'm not stopping. I'm just recalibrating my strategy." Kellan's third attempt, 3 weeks later, was considerably more direct and involved zero advance warning to either party. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October, unseasonably warm, and Wren was sprawled on her living room couch after school, still in her socks, half watching some show she wasn't actually paying attention to, when Kellan let himself in through the unlocked back door the way he'd been doing since he was 12. "Get up," he said. "We're going somewhere. I'm literally not wearing shoes." "Doesn't matter. Kellan, it is genuinely, factually true that I am not wearing shoes right now. I heard you the first time. Get up." Before Wren could fully process what was happening, Kellan had physically pulled her off the couch, herded her out the front door. No shoes, no wallet, no phone, nothing except the clothes she was already wearing, and deposited her into the passenger seat of his beat-up Honda Civic, locking the doors from the inside before she could argue her way back out. "This is kidnapping," Wren said, half laughing, half genuinely alarmed. "This is textbook kidnapping. It's an intervention. There's a difference." "There's not a legal difference, Kellan." He drove her, over her increasingly loud protests, straight across town to a familiar cul-de-sac lined with modest ranch houses, pulled up outside a house she'd walked into 1,000 times over 11 years of friendship, and put the car in park. "Kellan, what are you doing?" "I'm doing the thing you should have done a year and a half ago," he said, unlocking the doors now that they'd actually arrived. "Get out. I don't have shoes. You have feet. That's more than most people need for a driveway." He leaned across her and opened her door from the inside. "Wren, I love you, and I love him, and I cannot watch either of you dance around this for one more week. Get out of the car. Go inside. Talk to him. I will be back to pick you up at whatever time you text me, and not 1 second before. I don't have my phone. I already texted his mom that you're coming. Go." Wren sat frozen in the passenger seat for a full 5 seconds, staring at the front door of Theo's house, her heart hammering with a mixture of fury at Kellan and pure, undiluted panic. Then, because there was genuinely nothing else to do, no phone, no wallet, no shoes, no ride home except this exact plan playing out, she got out of the car. Kellan didn't wait around to watch. He peeled out of the driveway with a jaunty 2-finger salute out the window, leaving her standing barefoot on the pavement in front of the house she'd been visiting since she was 6 years old, feeling more exposed than she'd ever felt walking through that particular door. Theo's mother, Eileen, opened the front door before Wren had even worked up the nerve to knock, wearing the expression of a woman who had clearly received one extremely confusing text message and was choosing not to ask questions. "He's in his room," Eileen said, stepping aside to let Wren in, glancing pointedly at Wren's bare feet without comment. "I'll just be in the kitchen, not listening to anything, not even a little bit." Wren padded down the familiar hallway, past photographs of Theo at every age she'd basically witnessed in person, and found him in his room, sprawled across his bed, controller in hand, mid-game against some online opponent. "Hey," he said, glancing up, immediately clocking the strangeness of the situation. "Why are you barefoot?" "Kellan kidnapped me." Theo paused his game entirely, sitting up. "He did what?" "He pulled me off my couch, didn't let me grab shoes or my phone or my wallet, drove me here, and left. I don't have a way home. I'm at your mercy, basically." Something flickered across Theo's face. Confusion. Then something else. Something Wren couldn't quite read yet. "Okay," he said slowly. "Well, you're here now, I guess. Want to just hang out like normal until we figure out how you're getting home?" And so, despite the genuinely chaotic circumstances of her arrival, that's exactly what they did. They played Smash for 2 hours, Theo lending her a spare pair of his socks, so at least her feet weren't cold against the hardwood floor, both of them slowly settling back into the easy, familiar rhythm of 1,000 afternoons just like this one. If Wren's heart was hammering the entire time with the knowledge of what Kellan had apparently orchestrated and why, she did a reasonably good job of hiding it behind trash talk and genuine competitive focus. Around 4 o'clock, Theo's stomach growled loud enough that they both laughed. "Dairy Queen," he suggested. "I'll drive. You can be barefoot in my passenger seat. It's fine. I won't tell anyone. You're a very generous host." They drove to the Dairy Queen they'd been going to since middle school, the same cracked vinyl booths, the same slightly too loud radio playing pop songs from 3 years earlier, and ordered the exact same things they always ordered: a Reese's Blizzard for her, a plain chocolate dip cone for him, a habit so old neither of them had to actually say the order out loud anymore. The cashier already halfway through ringing it up before they'd finished approaching the counter. They sat in their usual booth, and for a while, everything felt entirely normal, the specific, comfortable normalcy of 11 years of practiced friendship. They talked about a tournament coming up in November. They talked about college applications, the looming, terrifying reality of senior year, finally catching up to both of them. Theo made a joke about her missing a combo timing earlier that made her nearly choke on her Blizzard, and she smacked his arm in retaliation, and it was, in every observable way, an entirely ordinary Thursday between two best friends. Except Wren could feel the clock ticking. Every minute that passed brought them closer to the moment he'd have to drive her home. And once she was home, the moment, whatever moment Kellan had engineered by throwing her, shoeless and unprepared, into this exact situation, would be gone. "You've been quiet," Theo said, somewhere around the bottom of her cup, studying her with a particular attentiveness that had always made her feel, simultaneously, completely known and completely exposed. "Everything okay? This whole afternoon's been weird. Kellan basically abandoned you on my doorstep with no explanation." "Yeah, it's been weird." She turned her spoon over in the melted remains of her Blizzard, working up the same nerve she'd been failing to work up for 18 months straight. "Theo, can I ask you something? And I need you to actually answer honestly, not just say whatever you think I want to hear. You know I always answer honestly. Sometimes too honestly. You've told me that yourself multiple times." "Fair." She took a breath. "Do you ever think Kellan's right? About us?" Theo went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the just date already thing. Everyone said it for years. We always laugh it off. I'm asking if you've ever actually thought about it seriously, or if it's always just been a joke to you." The silence that followed felt endless, though it was probably only a handful of seconds. Theo set down his half-finished ice cream cone, wiped his hands on a napkin with deliberate, careful precision, like he needed something for his hands to do while he figured out what to say with his mouth. "I've thought about it," he said finally, quietly, not quite meeting her eyes. "More than I probably should have, honestly. I've thought about it for a really long time, actually. I just never said anything because I was terrified of exactly what you're probably terrified of right now, which is losing this. Losing us. I'd rather have you as my best friend forever than risk saying something and having it wreck the best relationship of my entire life." Wren's heart was pounding so hard she was fairly certain he could hear it from across the small booth. "I feel the exact same way," she said. "I've felt that way for about 1.5 years now. I think that's actually why Kellan dragged me here today, without shoes, without any warning, because he got tired of watching both of us be too scared to say anything. Theo looked up at her fully then, something raw and hopeful breaking through the careful composure he usually wore so easily. So we're both just sitting on the exact same feeling. This whole time, apparently. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the most idiotic waste of a year and a half. I genuinely can't decide which. Can it be both? I think it has to be both. He reached across the sticky table and took her hand, the same hand that had held a Game Boy controller next to hers on a patch of grass 11 years earlier. And something about the gesture, simple and certain, made the whole restaurant around them fade into background noise. Wren, I've loved you for longer than I've known what that word actually means. I just didn't know how to say it without risking everything. You don't have to risk anything anymore, she said, her voice unsteady with everything she'd been holding in for a year and a half finally breaking loose. I love you too. I have for so long. He drove her home an hour later, both of them quieter than usual, though it was the comfortable kind of quiet, the kind that comes after something enormous has finally been said out loud and doesn't need to be repeated to still be true. When he pulled into her driveway, neither of them made a move to end the moment right away. So, Theo said, cutting the engine, what happens now? Practically, I mean, are we dating? Is that a thing we're actually doing? I think that's exactly the thing we're doing. Wren smiled, still barefoot, still wearing a spare socks, still holding a wallet and phone she'd retrieved from inside her actual house in about 30 seconds. Unless you want to keep pretending for another year and a half. Absolutely not. I've used up my entire lifetime supply of pretending. He leaned across the console, slow and deliberate, giving her every chance to pull back if she wanted to. She didn't. When he kissed her, it wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was careful, certain, the kind of kiss that happens between two people who've already spent 11 years building the actual foundation underneath it. When they finally broke apart, both of them a little breathless, Theo laughed softly. I'm going to have to thank Kellan for kidnapping you, which is a sentence I never expected to say out loud. Please don't let it go to his head. He'll be insufferable about it forever. He's already insufferable. This just gives him actual ammunition. Kellan, predictably, was thoroughly insufferable about it, taking credit for the entire relationship at every possible opportunity for the remainder of senior year, though nobody in their friend group particularly minded, since the outcome had clearly justified the chaos of the method. Wren and Theo's relationship, once it finally began, didn't feel like starting something new so much as finally naming something that had existed quietly, patiently for years. They still played Smash together, still went to Pixel Junction for tournaments, still ordered the exact same things at Dairy Queen, except now there were also hands held across booths and kisses stolen in parking lots, and an entirely new dimension to a friendship that had always, somehow, already contained the shape of what it eventually became. They stayed together through the rest of senior year, through the terrifying, uncertain stretch of choosing different colleges within driving distance of each other rather than risk the distance that had once, briefly, threatened to separate them in high school. They survived long-distance weekends, awkward introductions to college roommates who couldn't quite believe two people had actually been friends since they were 6 years old and were now genuinely, seriously dating. 2 years into college, during a summer break, Theo's family organized a camping trip to a stretch of wilderness up near a place called Widow's Hollow, a sprawling national forest a few hours from home. It invited Wren along, as they had for nearly every family trip since she was old enough to be invited to things. The hike up to their chosen campsite took most of a day, a winding trail through dense pine forest that eventually opened into what felt, genuinely, like something out of a storybook. A wide alpine meadow ringed by granite peaks, a shallow, crystal-clear creek cutting through wildflowers in every direction. The whole scene lit gold by the late afternoon sun in a way that made Wren stop dead in her tracks, breathless. Okay, she said. This is genuinely the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my entire life. Wait till you see it at sunset, Theo said, coming up beside her, slipping his hand into hers. My family's been coming here since I was a kid. I always thought about what it'd be like to bring you here someday. They set up camp with his parents and younger sister nearby. And that evening, once the rest of his family had retired to their tents, Wren and Theo hiked a short distance up a ridge overlooking the meadow, spreading out a blanket to watch the stars emerge over the mountains. The kind of sky you simply couldn't see back home, thick with more stars than either of them had words for. "I keep thinking about that day," Wren said, leaning into his shoulder, watching a shooting star trace across the sky. "The Barefoot day. Kellan practically throwing me into your driveway. Best kidnapping of my entire life. I was so scared, Theo. 18 months of being scared. And then he just forced the whole thing to happen in one afternoon because he got tired of watching us both be cowards. I think about it a lot, too," he admitted, pulling her closer against the cool mountain air. "I think about how close we both came to just never saying anything at all. How different everything could have been if he hadn't dragged you over that day. Do you regret it took so long?" He considered the question seriously, watching the stars. "No," he said finally. "I think we needed all those years first. All that time just being friends, actually knowing each other completely, before either of us try to be anything else. I think that's why it's worked so well since. We didn't build this relationship from nothing. We built on top of something that already had 11 years of foundation under it. Under that impossibly vast, star-filled sky, wrapped together against the mountain chill, something between them deepened into a closeness that went beyond even the years of history they already shared. A night neither of them would ever fully describe to anyone else, held instead as something entirely private, entirely theirs. The natural culmination of a love that had been quietly building since two 6-year-olds sat together on a patch of grass, arguing over a Game Boy. The years that followed carried their own complications, the way real relationships always do, even ones built on 11 years of prior friendship. There was a stretch during junior year of college when Theo, deep in the grueling first year of paramedic training, became so consumed by exhausting clinical rotations that Wren barely saw him for nearly 2 months straight, both of them snapping at each other during rare, exhausted phone calls in a way that felt entirely unfamiliar after years of effortless communication. "I feel like I'm losing you to an ambulance," Wren told him, during one particularly raw conversation, genuine fear cracking through her usual composure. "I feel like I don't even know how to talk to you anymore without it turning into an argument about how tired you are." "I know," Theo said, equally raw, equally scared. "I don't know how to fix it right now. I'm barely surviving this program as it is." They didn't break up during that stretch, though it came uncomfortably close, both of them white-knuckling through a season that tested a foundation they genuinely believed, up to that point, was unshakable. What saved it in the end wasn't some grand romantic gesture, but the same thing that had always defined their relationship at its core: honest, difficult conversation, both of them finally sitting down, exhausted and scared, and actually talking through what wasn't working instead of letting resentment build in silence. "I need you to tell me when you're overwhelmed instead of just disappearing into it," Wren told him. "I can handle you being busy. I can't handle feeling shut out. I need you to trust that when I disappear, it's not about you," Theo said. "It's about me barely keeping my head above water and needing space to do that without feeling guilty on top of everything else." They found a new rhythm after that, one built around clearer communication, scheduled check-ins even during his most brutal clinical rotations, a deliberate effort from both sides to protect what they'd built instead of assuming it would simply survive on autopilot the way it had, effortlessly, throughout their entire childhood friendship. Kellan, through all of it, remained a constant, if occasionally exasperating, presence in both their lives, still taking full credit for the relationship at every wedding, birthday, and holiday gathering where the story of the Barefoot kidnapping inevitably resurfaced. "You two owe your entire relationship to my genius," he announced at Wren's 23rd birthday party, several years into their relationship, well into his second beer. "I want that on the record. Multiple times. Publicly." "We're aware," Wren said, laughing, leaning into Theo's shoulder the way she had on that mountain ridge years earlier. "You remind us constantly, because it can't be said enough." There was admittedly one moment of genuine external drama that tested things more seriously than exhaustion or miscommunication ever had, a girl named Marisol from Theo's paramedic cohort, sharp and confident, who developed an obvious, persistent interest in him during a particularly grueling stretch of his training, one that culminated in an uncomfortable evening where Wren, stopping by unannounced to bring him dinner during a rare break, walked in on Marisol laughing a little too easily, standing a little too close in Theo's cramped apartment kitchen. Nothing had actually happened, and Theo made that abundantly immediately clear the moment Wren's face registered the scene in front of her, but the incident still shook something loose that took weeks of careful, honest conversation to fully repair. "I need you to understand how that looked," Wren told him later, once the initial hurt had cooled into something more workable. "I need you to actually take it seriously, not just brush past it because nothing technically happened." "I do take it seriously," Theo said. "I should have set clearer boundaries with her a long time before that moment ever happened. That's on me. I got comfortable and didn't think about how it might look or how it might actually feel to you, and I'm sorry for that." It wasn't a dramatic, relationship-ending betrayal. In the end, just a real, human misstep that required real, human accountability and repair, the kind every long relationship eventually has to survive in some form or another. They came through it stronger, if a little more careful, a little more deliberate about protecting what they'd built rather than assuming 11-plus years of history made it automatically indestructible. Now, nearly 8 years since that first barefoot afternoon at Dairy Queen, Wren sat on the edge of her and Theo's shared apartment balcony, watching him pack a duffel bag for his final clinical rotation before officially completing paramedic school, an ending they'd both been counting down toward for what felt like an eternity. "Last one," he said, zipping the bag shut, a note of genuine disbelief in his voice. "After this, I'm actually done. Actually, finally completely done. I still can't believe it's almost here. Neither can I, honestly." He sat down beside her on the balcony, looking out over the city they'd built an entire adult life in together, a life that had started, impossibly, on a patch of elementary school grass with a Game Boy Color and a stubborn refusal to be told no. "We should talk about the apartment thing," Wren said, the conversation they'd been circling for weeks finally surfacing properly. "Once you're done, once you've actually got steady hours instead of clinical rotation chaos. Moving in together, you mean?" Theo smiled, easy and certain the way that had become, over 8 years, so familiar to her it barely registered as anything except home. "I've been thinking about it for months, honestly. I just didn't want to bring it up until I actually had something stable to offer instead of just an idea." "You've been my best friend for nearly 20 years, Wren said, leaning into his shoulder the way she had on that mountain ridge, on that Dairy Queen bench, on 1,000 ordinary and extraordinary days across 2 decades of friendship that had eventually, patiently, become something more. "I think we can handle an apartment lease. I think we can handle a lot more than that, eventually." She looked at him, something warm and certain settling in her chest, the same feeling that at first, terrifyingly, confused her at 16 years old, watching him lean over a smashed controller with his shoulder brushing hers, and understood, with complete clarity, that whatever came next, the apartment, the years beyond it, everything still unwritten, would be built the same way everything else between them always had been. Patiently, honestly, on a foundation laid down so long ago neither of them could fully remember a version of their lives that didn't already contain the other. Somewhere across town, at that exact moment, Kellan was almost certainly telling the Barefoot kidnapping story to someone new for what had to be the 100th time, taking full, unearned credit for an ending that neither he, nor Wren, nor even Theo himself could have fully predicted the shape of all those years ago on a patch of elementary school grass, over a video game neither of them ever could have guessed would lead them here. What came next for Wren and Theo, the apartment, the years still ahead, all of it remained deliberately unwritten the way the best kinds of stories often do, leaving just enough space at the edges for anyone listening to imagine, in their own way, exactly how far two people who'd never really been just friends might actually go.